Hey everybody, this is Sophia, author of The Woman Code, and welcome to our December moment. This is something new that I've started to give you some inspiration every month that you can get and you can take and you can put in your journal, and hopefully you can put into practice, and it will help you better your woman code if you're a woman and help you to be a better human being if you're a man. So thank you for joining me, and I've got a couple things I want to say to you. First and foremost, happy December. And welcome to the holidays. It's the last month of the year. Can you believe 2018 is almost over? And I want you to do something for yourself, not for me, not anything you have to tell anybody. I want you to find some time this month to get a piece of paper, write it down. The scripture says, write the vision down and make it plain. Do you know why the prophet said that? Because there's something about writing stuff down. There's something about putting it on paper that makes it more real to us, that makes it more tangible, that makes it more achievable. So write this stuff down. Don't just watch the video or listen to the podcast and move on. Write it down. Write it down again and again. I don't want to hear that you don't have time. You had time to go get those new boots. You had time to go Christmas shopping. So make some time for you. And make some time to watch last month's video, which I've now made available to the entire public for the rest of this month, which is the 7 things you need to release, get rid of, or throw away before 2019. All of us can work on those 7 things. All of us is struggling in one of those areas or many of those areas if we tell the truth. If you want your life to be different, I heard a great word that I want to share with you today. I was at a women's conference this past week and I heard a great word, and the word was pivot. P-I-V-O-T, pivot. Pivot means to literally turn. It means to change. It's different than shifting. It's different than transforming. It's different than moving. Pivoting is to pivot. It's like a lurch. It's like a turn. It's a complete movement from where I am here to doing something different. I've got to make a turn in order for me to get to my destination. I've got to make a turn away from the wrong people if I want to get where I'm going. I got to make a turn away from this job that has me in a dead end, and I got to find that better job. I got to make a turn to go get my education that I gave up on 20 years ago. I got to make a turn to make my marriage work. I got to make a turn in my attitude to make it right with my kids. I got to make a turn to forgive. I got to make a turn to release. Whatever it is, a pivot is what you need in your life. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit, and then the message is yours. 2 things on my mind today. Number 1, I want you to really think about your family over the next 30 days. I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to think about getting rid of those 7 things that I talk about in the November video, which again is available and open for everybody to watch if you haven't seen it yet. And I want you to think about your family. Parents, I want you to think about your kids. And I want you to think about what you're giving them. And I want you to think about what you're speaking to them when you talk to them or when you get angry with them. I want you and your husband or you and your wife, men, to think about what it is that you are setting as an example for your kids when you argue, when you play, when you love, when you worship. What are your kids seeing? Because here's what I can promise you, that whatever they see, they're going to model. Whatever they see, they're going to take in, and it's going to set a tone for them for the rest of their lives. And I bring that up because on my heart is someone who was dear to me, and that's President Bush 41, who, as you all know, passed away last Friday. And in thinking about him and reflecting on him, I remembered fondly the first time that I met him. I was 22 years old. I was at an event in Washington, D.C. I hadn't expected to meet the President of the United States that day, but fate had it that I did. And I was blessed to be with some people who knew him and who could take me up and make an introduction. And I was blessed even more than that to spend about 10 minutes having a one-on-one conversation with the 41st President of the United States. And one of the things that I asked him was, Mr. President, what advice would you give a young woman like me who may want to run for public office someday or who just wants to be a success in her life? What would you tell me is one of the keys to make that happen? And you know what he said? What he said was, young lady, that's a great question. And I may not know a lot, he said. He said, but here's what I do know. I want you to get some stationery. I want you to make an investment in others by writing them notes, by sending them thank you cards, by writing thank you notes, by expressing condolences when people lose loved ones, sending happy birthday wishes, just showing your gratitude to people who help you or people that you just want to keep in touch with. He said, I want you to start a Christmas card list. And he said, I know you're young and maybe this isn't in your budget, but buy some Crane stationery. Now, those of you who are my age, you know what Cranes is. For you young people, that's actually paper that you write on. It's expensive paper, it's note cards, but it's as good as it gets. Hallmark is also great. And back in those times, in the early 90s, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have email, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have Facebook, we had none of that. We had pen and paper, we had stamps, and we had the telephone. That was it. So his advice was great for the time it was in, but I want you to know that not only did I take what he said to heart, and I was touched by it, but I practiced it for the past 27 or so years, however long it's been, since that day I met him in the summer of 1991. I made that Christmas card list. I invested in the stationery. I sent the notes. Anybody who's close to me will tell you they've gotten Hallmark cards because I only send the very best. They've gotten handwritten notes over the years or letters. That's me. That's what I do. And I got that from Bush 41. Why do I bring him up? Because as we reflect on this man's life, whether we're Democrats or Republicans, liberals or conservatives, black or white, doesn't matter. He was a good person. He served his country honorably. He was a bona fide war hero. He married his high school sweetheart and stayed married to her faithfully for 73 years until she passed, and then he passed 7 months later. They had 6 children. One of them died in childhood, and one of them became a president himself. An amazing marriage, an American story of a family, of service, of legacy. We should all be so blessed. But let me say this. If you haven't gotten a copy of this book, I want you to pick it up. This is my autographed copy of what really was a memoir that President Bush never wrote. And instead what he did was he put together his notes, his cards, and his letters, and he used them as a roadmap to teach people something about connection and living and how we treat one another and how we entreat one another and how we help one another and talk to one another and help each other get through. And that's the second part of what I want to say to you today. Beyond wanting you to pivot to your destiny and pivot to your greatness and pivot away from anything that's not good for you, those 7 things that I outlined in the November class, I want you to think about, how are you connecting to the people you love? How are you seen by the people in your workplace, in your social organizations, in your community? Are you someone that's compassionate? Are you loving? Are you kind? Are you generous? Are you good? Or are you always the busy one? Do you never have time? Are you always harried and hurried and crazy? That's not who you want to be when all is said and done. You know, my takeaways from the life of President Bush is that he was a man who had enormous blessings, and he also made enormous sacrifices. Everybody won't get to be president of the United States of America. Everybody won't get to be married to their sweetheart for 73 years. Everybody won't be blessed with 6 amazing children and have one of them be president of the United States, be born into wealth and privilege. Most people don't get that life. But your life and my life can still be extraordinary when we love and when we care and when we connect and when we walk in our purpose and we do what we're called to do. You know, of all the stories you hear about President Bush over these last days, you hear one consistent thing. He cared about people. Didn't matter if he was the president, the vice president, the head of the CIA, or the head of the RNC, or a member of Congress, or envoy to China. He was the guy that wrote the note. He was the guy that picked up the phone. He was the guy that helped his friends. He was the guy that encouraged people, even when he himself was in a position where he could have looked down on people. He could have said, I'm too busy. I'm the president. But that's not who he was. And in his death, and I'll end with this, in his death, we can tell how he lived. You see, our deaths, in my opinion, in some ways are more important than our living, because it is in our death and our dying that tells the story of how we lived, how we treated people, how we reached out to people, how we fed the hungry and clothed the naked and took care of the less fortunate, how we served our country, how we served our community, how we served our church, how we served our faith. If you call yourself a Christian like I do, or a person of faith, that means you're supposed to act a certain way and talk a certain way. And in the Bible, it says we have an aroma. It says we're a royal priesthood. There's a smell to us, a good smell. It should be a sweet smell. It should be something people want to come around. It should be something that draws people closer to us, not repels them away from us. I want you to think about these things this holiday. And as you're watching the funeral over the next couple of days, the state funeral of our late president, a beloved president, a president who was a great statesman, I think that we can learn a lot from not just his living, but what we see in his dying. He is revered. He is respected. I've seen political foes shed tears. I've seen people who didn't agree with one of his policies say humbly, he was a really good man, and I was honored to work with him. I was honored to even disagree with him. That's what it's about. At the end of the day, we can disagree. We don't all have to see the world the same. But we should always show each other the basic respect and courtesy and kindness of what it means to be a good human being, and what it means to honor a life when it's gone, and what it means to celebrate a life of service. At the end of the day, you and I too will one day die. It is real as real. And I think that it's important to think about when you do, how do I want to be remembered? What legacy am I leaving? What will people do in my dying? How will I be remembered? Just a thought, not a sermon, just a thought. And so as we go into this holiday season and we begin to attend parties and we celebrate, and we're celebrating with libation and good food and friendship and family, let's really reflect on what it means to be alive, and what it means to be a servant, and what it means to do something bigger than yourself, what it means to pivot in order to get to wherever it is you're trying to go to. What is it that you need to get rid of? What is it that you need to turn away from? What is it that you need to get out of your life in order to get on your way? That's what I want you to think about. I'll be back with a longer masterclass later in the month for those that are Club Woman Code members. Please go to thewomancodebook.com to join up and learn more about the club. And again, the November masterclass is wide open. It's on our YouTube page on the Woman Code. You can look it up. It's on my Twitter feed, and it is pinned to the top. It's also on Facebook. And I know it'll bless you. So take this as a gift to me. It's an early Christmas gift for you to get you where you want to be in 2019. All right, you guys, you have an amazing December, and I'll be back. And for those of you who are not members, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and God bless you and keep you in 2019. Bye-bye now.